Again, will you give to this committee your public posts on Twitter? Will you make them available to this
My social media is in my personal capacity.
Mr. Chairman, I have to tell you, this is the most extraordinary thing I have seen in my brief time in the Senate. I have never seen a witness blatantly lie under oath like Dr. Shogan has just done to this committee, stonewalled this committee, and just repeatedly refused to answer my questions about her own post. Mr. Shogan, when you were here last year, a number of senators asked you, including me, a series of questions about article you'd written, public statements you had made on social media that were, I have to say, pretty grossly partisan, and I thought offensive, and you and I went back and forth about it. After that, a number of us asked you questions for the record relating to these statements. I want to follow up on one of them. I, in particular, asked you to give us a full accounting of the public posts that you had made on Twitter. You had locked your Twitter account before you came before this committee. It had previously been public. I asked you to provide the public posts that had previously been available on Twitter because the ones that we have were pretty disturbing. You responded as follows, and I quote, "My personal Twitter account is comprised of posts about my mystery novels, events at the White House Historical Association, Pittsburgh sports teams, travels, and my dog," end quote. Is this an accurate statement?
Yes, Senator.
I just remind you you're under oath. Is this an accurate statement?
Yes, Senator.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your Twitter posts then that I was asking you about. On February 18th, 2022, you posted on Twitter bemoaning the dropping of mask requirements for children, including those under the age of 5. Do you remember that post?
No, Senator. Those tweets were in my personal capacity.
No. I asked you, would you give all public posts that you had made on Twitter? You said no, effectively, and you said that your Twitter posts consisted of mystery novels, events at the White House Historical Association, Pittsburgh sports teams, travels, and my dog. And you just told me now under oath that you stood by that. So now let's talk about your Twitter posts. On February 18th, 2022, you posted bemoaning the fact that mask requirements for children under the age of 5, one of whom I happen to have, by the way, had been dropped. Is that a post about your dog or sports teams?
My social media is in my personal capacity,
Answer
Senator.
my question, please, because you've testified under oath that you only posted about your dog and sports teams and novels, and you also said you wouldn't give this committee any of your public posts. So, is your post on February 18th, 2022, bemoaning the lifting of mask requirements for children under the age of 5, who I might just ask all of the data has said is extremely harmful to children, these mask requirements? We'll leave that aside for now. Is that a post about your dog or sports teams? Yes or no?
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
Yes or no, Ms. Shogan, you are under oath before this committee, and I have to say, you have placed this issue squarely in record by repeatedly refusing to answer. Yes or no?
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
So you're not answering my question. Let's talk about another post. 26th of May, 2022. You talk about an assault weapons ban, retweet a post, ban assault weapons now. Say you agree with this idea that you have to be a certain age to buy so-called assault weapons in America. Is that a post about sports teams or your dog or mystery novels?
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
What about the post on January 5th of 2021 in which you say that Ted Cruz ought to stay in his own lane and not worry about what's going on in Pittsburgh? This is a reference, I think, to questions he had about the certification of the last election. Is that a post about your dog or sports teams or mystery novels?
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
What about the post, do you remember December 10th, 2020, where you said that you were hoping that President Trump would have his vetoes overridden, and you agreed with the post that he was a weak policy president? Is that a post about your dog or sports teams or mystery novels?
My social media is in my personal capacity.
What about your post on January 5th, 2021, in which you speculated that President Trump would pardon himself next, participating in a conversation about the certification of the Electoral College? Is that a post about sports teams or mystery novels or your work at the White House Historical Association?
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
What about the post? Do you remember this one? I said we seem to be having an incredible case of amnesia, but maybe you remember this one. This is from December 3rd of 2021. In which you advise an individual who goes by Meg on social media that the Library of Congress, you advise this person to complain about religious flags that have been planted on the grounds of the Library of Congress, and you say that they ought to be removed. And you go on to give this person advice about how to complain and have them removed. Do you remember that post?
My social media is in my personal
Do you remember the
capacity.
post?
My
Do you
social
remember
media is
the
in my
post?
personal capacity, Senator.
I have to say, I have been here for 4 years in the Senate. I have never seen a witness stonewall like this before. Never. I've seen a lot. This is extraordinary. Do you remember this post? December 3rd, 2021.
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
I mean, this is unbelievable. And you want to be the archivist of the United States. You lied to us under oath. You lied to us in your QFRs. You just lied to me a second ago under oath. And now you're sitting here stonewalling, not answering questions about public posts that you've made. Are you a lawyer, Ms. Shogan?
No, Senator.
Are you familiar with the Shurtleff case at the United States Supreme Court?
No, Senator, I'm not.
Well, in that case, the Supreme Court held that, in fact, it constitutes viewpoint discrimination for a government entity to remove religious flags from its property when it's opened up the property to allow other people to put flags on it. Exactly the question that you were addressing in your public posts on Twitter. You're giving legal advice, which you're not qualified to give, directly contrary to the United States Supreme Court. I just wonder, does this have to do with your view that you wrote about that the religious right is connected to the rise of anti-intellectualism in American politics? Is that why you said what you said about religious flags, that the religious right is a force for anti-intellectualism? Explain that to me.
No, Senator.
Do you stand by your comment that the religious right is part of the rise of anti-intellectualism in American politics?
Senator, that article was written. It was about how Republican presidents use common sense terminology to effectively communicate with Americans.
Yeah, in which you said that the religious right, the rise of the religious right is part of the rise of anti-intellectualism in American politics. I just point out that's the article in which you say anti-intellectual. The title is Anti-Intellectualism in the Modern Presidency, Republican Populism. Very nonpartisan. Dr. Shogan, I'm going to ask again, will you give to this committee your public posts on Twitter? Will you make them available to this
My
committee?
social media is in my personal capacity.
Mr. Chairman, I have to tell you, this is the most extraordinary thing I have seen in my brief time in the Senate. I have never seen a witness blatantly lie under oath like Dr. Shogan has just done to this committee, stonewalled this committee, and just repeatedly refused to answer my questions about her own posts that are in public. For these reasons, I will oppose your nomination, and I strongly, strongly urge this committee to take action on this and force this witness to own up to the fact that she is misleading us right now before our eyes, Mr. Chairman.
And now, in the final minute of this hearing, the moment that will be replayed, parsed, clipped, indexed, cited, and disputed, Senator Josh Hawley ends his questioning with a line that contains both accusation and astonishment. He says directly, in full view, in formal record, "This is the most extraordinary thing I have seen in my brief time in the Senate." He asserts that the nominee has blatantly lied under oath and stonewalled this committee. He states unambiguously that he will oppose the nomination, and in that instant, the hearing room freezes in the silent optical stillness that only Senate hearing rooms create. Because this is exactly the kind of collision the American system is designed to expose. It is a moment when institutional authority, public trust, personal truthfulness, memory, interpretation of words, and the boundary between personal and official all collide in real time, with no script and no protection from the raw light of testimony. This is the American experiment, not in theory, but in combat conditions. What this moment reveals, more than anything else, is not who is right or wrong in ultimate conclusion. America will debate that. Analysts will argue that. Commentators will frame it in their own ideological lens. But the deeper issue is that we are watching the fragility of epistemic trust inside democratic power itself. The nominee repeatedly states, "My social media is in my personal capacity." The senator repeatedly demands yes or no distinctions about the content of those posts and demands accurate disclosure that was requested earlier. This is not merely a fight about tweets. This is a fight about the difference between personal identity and public responsibility in an era where digital footprint becomes testimony, where posts can cross from hobby to preference to public worldview inference instantly. Congressional hearings were never engineered originally for a world where a nominee's public record includes thousands of micro-expressed opinions scattered across platforms that were never meant to become sworn evidentiary artifacts. And yet now, they are. The boundary between private self and public self has been demolished by the architecture of the internet, and the modern hearing process has not yet evolved the rules to fully govern that seismic shift. This is why it feels volatile. This is why it feels historic. The cinematic weight here is not simply two people arguing on opposite sides of a dais. It is the weight of a system trying to figure out how to adjudicate truth in a world where truth is not stored in libraries, but in timelines. Nominees now carry not only resumes, but archives. Senators now conduct not only questioning, but excavation. That is what this moment revealed. When Senator Hawley states that he has never seen a witness stonewall like this before, what he is expressing is less about this individual nominee personally, and more about the parliamentary shock when the expected norm of factual disclosure meets the modern norm of digital self-curation. His astonishment is a reflection of the dissonance between an old procedural government architecture and a new information environment that moves faster, wider, and with far lower friction than the rules of formal nomination, vetting were ever built to sustain. Morality inside government depends on clarity. It depends on accurate representation. It depends on a shared baseline of definitional honesty. If the Senate cannot even reach mutual recognition of what constitutes a public post, then the epistemic contract that hearings rely on begins to fray. Because the entire purpose of this institution, this exact room, is to validate legitimacy through examination, not accept ambiguity through avoidance. And that is the true political meaning of this moment, not the accusation, not the defense, not the ideological vectors orbiting it, but the recognition that democratic systems are only as strong as the clarity of speech inside them. If language becomes evasive, government becomes incoherent. If testimony becomes non-answer, power becomes unaccountable. If personal expression becomes untraceable, voters lose the ability to see the real mind behind the public role. Trust is the most scarce currency left in American politics. And hearings like this are one of the final remaining places where trust must be proved under pressure, in real time, under oath. That is why this moment matters far beyond this single nomination. It is a case study in the future of institutional legitimacy. It is a warning signal of a world where record-keeping is infinite, but selective disclosure is normalized. It is a reminder that every branch of American government, legislative, executive, judicial, archival, must evolve to handle the moral consequences of digital permanence. And if Congress does not adapt, the public will not believe. So in this closing moment, as the lights fade on this particular session, and as this video ends, remember what hearings like this are teaching us. Government is not just about power. Government is about truth that can withstand confrontation. Democracy does not survive through politeness. It survives through accountability. The American experiment will only endure if our institutions demand clarity and refuse to permit ambiguity to pass as neutrality. This is the lesson of today. And if we want a government capable of navigating the digital era with integrity and tact, we must continue to watch. We must continue to examine. We must continue to demand transparency, not in service of partisanship, but in service of reality itself. This is the role of oversight. This is the purpose of hearings. This is the function of civic vigilance. Subscribe to Liberty Congress of USA.